أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to another webinar. It's great to have you again. As usual, start with some reflection from the Quran. We've picked these verses from Surah Ar-Rahman to the topic that we are discussing today for Fitrah, which is something which actually Brian himself recommended, because I'm sure in his work with the Muslim community, this concept of Fitrah comes time and time again in terms of the original disposition of us, or how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. And so I wanted to look at the famous verse 30:30, which includes this concept of fitrah, but also to look at the verse that comes before it and then the verse that comes after it. So if we start with verse 29, it says, but those who follow their own, ظلموا أفواههم, they oppress, or oppress their own selves to their own desires بغير علم, without knowledge. فمن يهدى من الذل إلى الله, then who can guide one whom Allah has sent astray? وما لهم من ناصرين, and for them there are no helpers. So again, the interesting part here, ahwa'ahum, is talking about desires. It's talking about people who follow their desires without knowledge. And who is there to guide them? Then the verse goes forward. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ الَّذِينَ حَنِيفًا, direct yourself, or direct your face towards that which is Hanifa, which they've translated as inclining to the truth, but something which is correct. To direct your face towards the religion Hanifa, Ledin and Hanifa, inclining to the truth. And this is where the topic comes in. Fatarat Allah allati fatara nas alayha. As you're turn your face towards the fitrah of what God has created, and God has created all people. So he says not just one person, but God has this fitrah which he has done upon everyone. And then la tabdil li khalqillah, no changes should there be in the creation of Allah. And a lot of the time when we ask scholars about transgender issues or issues to do with changing our body so it aligns with the what we think is our soul, sometimes they quote this verse to say God says, no, there should not be change in the creation of Allah, of how Allah created, you know. And then it says, Allazina al-qaim walakin aksara nas la ya'lamun. This is the correct position. This is the correct deen. وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. God is saying that most people will not agree with this. Most people will not agree with this notion to not change the creation of Allah, to adhere to the fitrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then interestingly, the verse after talks about repentance and prayer, munibina ilayhi, going into repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having taqwa, wa aqima salat, having taqwa, having God centricity, fearing Him, establishing the prayer and not being among those who commit shirk, who associate others with God. So we have this concept in the middle that fitra, and a lot of the times um, people come to me and they say, well, was my fitra corrupt from the start? Well, no. God creates, everyone is sinless at start. That's why we have the traditions that talk about if you come to the religion and you did not know about the religion before, you're sinless. You're sinless like you were as your mother gave birth to you. So we have this idea that when you're born sinless. This is known as the fitra. And the fitra is the original, if you like, factory reset settings that God has sent to you. Now, if people develop same-sex attraction later on, um, we also know that it needs water, it needs sunlight, it needs things to grow. So you cannot say that, oh, that person primordial state is corrupted. Well, there's a part of nourishment and nurture which also comes into place. And you can't just say somebody who has, say, SSA is corrupted from the start, right? Or you say the fitra is corrupt from the start. No. The fitra of every individual is the same, is correct, and the verse here clearly says, "La tabdil li khalqillah," no change should there be in what God has created. For those of you who might not know who we are a peer support organization for Muslims who struggle with sexual or gender identity. Among the different things that we do, we have support circles, we have women's circle, which we've continued again. We found a volunteer, so we're looking for. It's no longer in hiatus. We're looking for people to join that, and we have an Arabic circle, which is complete and full. We also have a coaching service, which I do on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then we also provide training for mosques or other organizations. One of the things in what we do in outreach is we have free webinars, which are open to everyone, literally everyone who is interested in this topic. We have a diverse range of speakers that we bring in. One thing that we've just started at the moment is our book club. There was an interest in not just a support circle, but something like a book club where we're going through something. So we've started with this book by Dr. Asif Hirani, which talks about the postmodern paradigm of sexuality and how that is kind of understood now. So if you're interested in that, we start on the 28th, I think it is, September. And you can enroll to that by going to the link to strongsupport.co.uk/book club. Introduce Brian. Brian and I met at the IFTCC conference, actually, numerous times. It's a pleasure to have him on. He is a professional counselor and supervisor registered with Singapore Association for Counseling. He is also a lay Catholic missionary since 1997, and he does his work in English and Thai. And I've also seen in his website where he says he goes to Malaysia, Thai, or Singapore. So which is quite something to say. I can have one-to-one session in three different countries, which I think is fantastic and quite something. He has done counseling work with seminarians and religious people in these three countries, as well as Vietnam and Philippines. He's also been sought by many counselors. Actually, I think in a few days he's going to Bahrain to do something as well. So, amazing work across different leaders of conservative religious communities like Muslims and Christians to provide educational talks to remove misconceptions and prejudices, which we'll talk about his first book, where that, affirming the core, where it was to remove that pain, remove that prejudice of what it is to feel same-sex attracted, especially in communities where it's very difficult, let's just say, to talk about same-sex attraction. Brian continues to update himself through the people who sought his help, detailed case studies which he mentions in his books, and professional conferences, um, such as the IFTCC in US, Asia, and Europe. He's also the general board member of the IFTCC, life member of Christian Counseling Association of Thailand, and as well as the Association for Christian Counseling in Singapore. If you want to find, this is the website. It's socgc.weebly.com. That's socgc.weebly.com, and you can find more about getting in touch with Brian. The two books which I mentioned, uh, the first of it, which I kind of mentioned at the start, the first book, which I think is now revised, it's in its second edition, um, talks more about the theme and um, the factors behind same-sex attraction, and it's written for pastoral support. It's written for people who are dealing with this population, maybe don't know how to incorporate the psychological and spiritual approach to this issue. Like I said, there's it's all detailed case studies and discussions of what he has had, and as well as the second book, which is building upon the first book, reaffirming the core, and focusing more on strategies for care and protection from the original um, first book. So the first book's talking more about the pain, the issues, and then the second book is talking about how to create uh, those care systems, those support systems going forward. And with that, I hand over to Brian.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you also, everybody, for coming because of your interest. And I really hope I'll be able to provide some information that could be of help. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Just give me a few moments. And there we have it there. Okay. Okay, so that's the title, Faith, Fitra, and SSA. So I will be beginning with um, the content and sequence of the presentations with a quick introduction. And this will be nice sequence. So I'll be speaking about how does same-sex attractions develop. Okay. And then I'll be speaking a bit about fitra and faith. Now, I'm not a Muslim, so I'm not the expert, but I'm just going to try and fit in the first part, same-sex attractions, how it develops into fitra and into faith. So hopefully there's more than enough time. After that, we can have a question and answer session. So just very quickly, here are some common factors that can influence a person's feeling of attraction to people of the same sex. I don't think this is really new. So I think most of you will know. For a boy, these are some other factors. If he doesn't play sports, he doesn't like other boys, he can't fit in, he has only mother and sisters, only female friends, close to mother, dominant mother. So these are all the common factors, but there are more than that. And there's a slide further down where it's really going to be detailed. But of course, these detailed stuff is also in the book that Ali spoke about just now. And for a girl, these are some of the common factors. Now, not everybody have all the factors, and each person have very unique combination of factors. I do train counselors, and we do have monthly case conferencing, and we've gone through hundreds of cases, and really you can see I wouldn't say it's a pattern, but you can see how the person is affected through all these different factors. I'll speak a bit more about these factors a little bit more structured way somewhere down the line. Okay. So just wanted to show you that we do have some common factors. And then here I'm going to explain what is not chosen and what is chosen. Right. So we now know that there are developmental factors. And then at point A, this is the person's first awareness of either same sex attractions or what to be more accurate is called non heterosexuality. Okay. It is not chosen. And this can be anywhere. It could be 10 years old, 12 years old, or even 15 years old. And then after point A, if I search now, what is this? Look for information, and there's lots of this kind of pro LGBT explanations on the social media. And you have things like it is natural, God made you this way, there's nothing wrong. And then somewhere down the line, you may say, okay, I identify as L, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, whatever. It can be as quick as within a few months. It could take as long as 5 years from point A to point B. Okay, because there's all kinds of things going on, either there's distraction, resistance, or whatever. But there is a substantial number of people that goes to point C. Now, point C, these are people who do not want to identify as LGBT or Q, even though they have the feelings. Okay, and the question is, how many are there from in this hidden? By the way, you can see this is in gray and this is in gray because these are things that are really not known.
Mm.
Now, here's a study. It's just 6 years ago, 2019. Look right on the top here. It's all with non-heterosexuality, and on the right column, these are those who are out. That means they are the ones who say, "Okay, I identify as gay or lesbian and whatever." But look at how many are hidden,
Mm.
and take a look at the countries. All right. Now, if you are in England, okay, that's a figure, but still is almost one third. One third is a significant minority, very significant. But if you look at these countries, Middle East and North Africa, which is predominantly Muslim, not surprisingly, 94%. That's a huge number. Okay, but if you look at Eastern Europe, Asian countries, and you look at the global total, it's 75%, or here is even much more. So there is a substantial number of people who feel the same-sex attraction but do not want to identify as gay or lesbian. So this is just a quick introduction that I wanted to highlight. Okay. Now, let me also say that the people up here, they have their worldview, and therefore they also have a different language. And the people down here, they hold on to a different worldview.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is what Benjamin Wolf, which is the American linguist, says. Each language embodies and perpetuates a particular worldview. The speakers of a language are partners to an agreement to see and think of the world in a certain way. This is very crucial. Let me give you another example. Let's say a group of doctors, okay, and they are discussing about a particular case. They will be using words, they'll be using terminologies that we who are not doctors, we have absolutely no idea what's going on, okay? But if a young man who wants to be a doctor or a young interns, he has to learn the language in order to understand what is the worldview of people in this medical industry. Okay. Now, those who are hidden, meaning those who do not identify as LGBTQ, do not have a language and they do not have a voice. Very crucial here again, because we are talking about people who have unwanted same sex attraction, and we now know it's a lot, many in this world. I'm working in Asia, and I see many, many people who have same sex attraction and do not want to identify as gay or lesbians. I know that this sentence that I just said would infuriate some gay activists and people who are trying to make it normal. But okay, I'm sorry. The reality is we do have a lot of people who do not want to identify as LGBTQ, but they struggle with non heterosexuality. And I do give a lot of talks to churches and religious communities, and I say to them, we need to use the correct language. So I'm going to speak a bit more about language. For example, a person or a Muslim who identifies as lesbian, gay, or trans, it's not the same as a Muslim with same sex attraction but does not want to identify as LGBTQ. So I already said that. So let me go some examples. I'm gay. I hope that gay marriage will be legal. The Ummah must help LGBTQ Muslims, okay, or Catholics, doesn't really matter. But it's different from I struggle with same sex attraction. I wish it would go away. The Ummah must realize that there are people with unwanted same-sex attraction. These two are different languages. Those that is on top and those that are bottom. Okay? And this is very crucial when we are listening to somebody. We need to know where they at. Okay? And it's quite crucial also in Asia because we want to help these people. This one, we don't want to fight with them. Okay, let me further go on. The person who identifies gay or lesbian and the person with same-sex attraction, again, these are not the same. Unfortunately, in Asia, too many people group them as one and the same. And that's a mistake because a person with same sex attraction, if he's lumped together as this, and then he's also told you are a sinner and is accused you're a bad person, hey, he didn't choose to have same sex attraction. So, again, very important to teach the people in the community, in the Ummah, have the right language and terminology and to understand. A person who identifies as part of the LGBT community, not the same as a person with feelings of non-heterosexuality. The person is Ashma, is Asimov. This is not the correct usage, right? But a person with, this is the correct usage. But then again, on this side, she is lesbian. They are. Okay, this is usable, but this is not correct. He is SSA. They are involved in SSA activities. Now, understandably, as parents, as university, if you know, I hear this all the time. You know, my son is SSA, my daughter is involved in SSA activities. I have to say, no, no, no. Your son is gay. If he's involved in activity, he is gay, all right? But if your son is avoiding, then he probably is struggling with SSA. So this is really going to be helpful. Lastly, because I'm always been accused, oh, so you're trying to cure us. Well, let me use this analogy. Hunger is a deficit. What is missing is enough food. Okay? So having same sex attraction is a symptom that shows something is missing. What is missing is proper affirmation, emotional affirmation from good people. That's what's missing, right? I live with hunger. I identify as hunger. Hey, very different language here. I have hunger. We should celebrate being hunger. Hey, now you get to see what's going on over here. Okay, it's not the same. So if we discover an adult who's been living with hunger their entire life, we shouldn't say, well, we should just accept them as they are and celebrate it. No, 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 no. We should still provide what is missing from their life. They may regain some or all of what they have never had, depending on how much and how long they've been hungry. So it's not a disease. It is not something that needs to be cured, but is rather something that's missing in their lives. Okay, so that's the emotional affirmation. So with that, let me go on and to explain how does non-heterosexuality develop or same-sex attraction, how does it develop? So I'm going to use this analogy, hardware and software. So sex equals hardware, gender equals software. So just keep that in mind. I'm using this as an analogy. And I'll begin first with the hardware, okay, which is the biological sex. Now, everybody knows there's male and female in almost all creatures God created, all animals. There's a difference, okay? And scientists call this sexual dimorphism, okay, which comes from the word morphology, okay? And the role of sexual dimorphism on reproductive success. So the difference actually has a role. So sexual dimorphism is a condition in which both sexes of the same species display different characteristics other than the differences in their genitalia. This condition occurs in many animals, okay, and some plants. Differences can include secondary characteristics, for example, size, weight, color, markings, so on and so forth. Okay, so why? The strategy of the difference is to increase the chances of survival of offspring of the next generation. So, for example, for the ducks over here, the female is dull colored. If she's sitting on a nest, well, its advantage is to be dull colored. And the male duck, which is colorful and energetic, is to distract the enemy. Okay, so that's the strategy here. And here, for the strategy is to produce more eggs so that at least some will survive. That's why the female is bigger than the male. So there's every species there's a reason why there are differences. Okay, so scientists call this um, strategy to improve reproductive success. So if the reproductive success is poor, then the species would tend towards extinction. Okay, so sexual dimorphism has a role. Now, so far we're talking about hardware. Okay, so let's go on. For mammals, males are bigger, right? So sexual dimorphism in humans. Okay, so this is men compared to women. And you can see men, their high metabolic rate, their upper body and lower body are stronger, taller, heavier, faster, greater lung capacity, so on and so forth. And you look at females compared to men, they have more white blood cells, more immunocompetent. In other words, they have better survivability. Cells have better regenerative efficiency. And that's the reason why in every country, females outlive males. Okay, on the average, 5 years, can be more depending which country. So when we see pictures like this, we roughly know, this is good for the next generation. Or pictures like this. This is good for the next generation. Now, I suddenly realize I'm using the wrong set of slides. I'm going to change. Sorry, just give me some time. I have to call in the right the one. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And I'm going to call up the right slides. Open. Okay, this is the one that I'm supposed to use. Okay. All right, we are back here. All right. Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm using the wrong set of slides. Okay. Okay. All right. So now we are going to software because I just covered hardware. Let me just explain computer hardware and software first. Okay. So for computers, so the hardware will be things like sensors, keyboard, and screen. And for those of you who know about computer software, you begin with the machine language, followed by programming language and program environment, and then applications, and sometimes add-ons and extensions. Okay. Now for the human hardware, it's pretty similar. You have the procedural memory, priming, emotional conditioning, and then episodic and semantic. Our consciousness is only at the episodic and semantic memory. So let me show you the next one. So this is all human memory. So you can see um, only this part here is declarative. Declarative means you can explain. Okay, you can explain an episodic event. You can explain concepts. Okay, but this is non-explicit. It is below consciousness. It doesn't pass through your language. Okay, so you're unable to express. Okay, because these are below consciousness actually. So if you look at the hardware, that's where the genes are all about. Okay, so the genes are there. But when you look above here, there are no genes for religion, culture, or language or practice. Okay, I cannot look at your genes and say, oh, you're going to be a Muslim, you're going to be a Christian. There's no genes for these. So these are entirely software. Okay, all right. So we're back here. This is the human brain, and you can see it is made up of three evolutionary parts. You have the reptilian, which is just instincts and survival. Then you have the mammalian, which is emotions and the feeling of relationships. Okay. And then you have the thinking brain, which is consciousness, logic, language, morality, religion, is all up here. Okay. Now, so there you can see consciousness is only on the last two on the right side. Emotional conditioning, this is unconscious. All right. So, for example, a 1 year old kid, 1.5 years old, 2 years old. Okay. And is there any consciousness? Not exactly in the same way, but the child does have emotional condition. The child will feel close to the mother or not close or afraid or not afraid. Okay. Um, so let me give you just an example. Let's say a kid and he's got a crazy father who is big, fat, and loves to wear red t-shirts. And this father is crazy. Every time he sees a child, will step on the foot of the child. The child is just 1 year old, and the child will cry. Okay? And after a while, priming comes in. So every time when the child sees the father, the child will run, hide, and and for some reason, before the child reached 3 years old, this crazy father just disappears. We don't know why. Maybe he got an accident or whatever. And because it happened all way too very early, as the child grows up, no conscious memory at all of that episode where this crazy big fat man with a red t-shirt, red shirt, no memory at all. But every time when this child sees Santa Claus, the child cries. The child says, I don't know why, I just don't like Santa Claus. Okay? So this is just an example of emotional conditioning, which is not conscious. Okay? All right. Did you know that animals have homosexuality? And I've asked this question in so many groups, and a lot of people didn't know. Well, there is. Okay. And this book came up, it's about 25 years ago. Bruce Bagemill. This particular book chronicles about 500 species. Today, I think you just go on the internet, how many species? The internet will tell you it's about 2,000 species. But this book is very interesting because it's part one and part two. Part one is a summary. Part two is going through all the different species. And in part one, this is what it says. When animals have homosexual sex, nearby animals are nonchalant. It means they don't care. All right. So if a cow and a cow is having homosexual sex, the other cows around are just going to continue chewing grass. Okay. If a monkey and a monkey, the other monkeys around is not going to bother at all. I'm not surprised because animals do not have cognitive dissonance. They don't have a moral thinking brain. Okay. So what it means is that probably the problem is somewhere here. Animals, they don't have this. All right. So I'm going to explain what's going on here. All right. The emotional brain. And this is below consciousness. Keep that in mind. Okay. So it's somewhere here. All of this, look at it. These are affecting the emotional memory. When a boy does not play sports with other guys, he's not getting the positive emotional connection with other boys when he does not like other boys. If he only has female friends, he is getting the positive emotional conditioning from females. You see what's going on here? Okay. So all of these factors here is somehow affecting the emotional memory. Okay. Once you get that, let me go a little bit further. These are the four ways in which that part of the brain or the software can be impacted. Situations that prevent adequate same sex emotional conditioning. Okay? Now, let me just give you a very simple example. Let's say a boy playing football, playing soccer. In his conscious mind, he's thinking about who do I pass the ball to, where should I be running. That's all in a conscious level. But the unconscious level is I'm one of the guys. The fact that the ball comes to me, I'm one of the guys. I kick the ball, somebody takes it, I'm one of the guys. But it's not conscious. Let me contrast it. He kicks the ball, and the other boy says, who says you can play with us? When you get bullying from the other boys, then you don't get that emotional conditioning. Okay, so that's situation number one. Number two, situation that facilitate cross-sex emotional conditioning or opposite sex emotional conditioning. My friends, me as a boy, all my friends are girls. I don't like the boys. Okay, or I don't like the other girls. I like what the boys are doing. I play soccer with the other boys. Situations that affect healthy relationships with the opposite sex. This affects girls more often. I don't feel safe with all the men. I don't feel safe with boys. In my village, all the boys, all the men are horrible. This is very common for the female. And lastly, conditions that compel the thinking brain to dominate. Now remember, the human brain does have the thinking brain. So if a child or a student is always concentrating on his studies and there's no socialization at all, and then you add on top of it, I don't like the other boys, I don't like, they always bully me, and therefore I compensate by being good in studies in my school. Man, that's so common. That's so common. So these are the four. And I'll go further, and you can see number one, situations that preclude same sex emotional conditioning. And then you see some examples for the boys, for the girls. These are the bad factors, and these are the good factors. You should contrast it. If the boys like to play with other boys, like this is good for them. It is for the girls too. And then this is number two, bad factors and good factors. Okay. And then this is three and four. Now, I won't go through all of them because it's just so many. All right. Um, but for me as a professional and when I do train other counselors, I would say to them, get to know this, okay? And the more practice they have, many of them will quite automatically be able to identify. Now, each person, each case is different. The factors are different. Everyone is different. Okay. All right. So just want to let you know that these are the four groups which you look for. Um, Interestingly, if you look at the good factors, what a boy and a girl should have, you will realize that many of our communities, they have neglected this. Okay? These are the things that they should do, but they've neglected it. And many communities, unfortunately, many families too, they don't realize that the bad things are happening to their children. Okay, so let me use an analogy. These are two robots. One is a maintenance robot in the hospital, and the other one is a nurse. And then they have software. Okay, and so you have a robot, you need to have an appropriate software. But what if there's some accident or some mistake and the software was accidentally swapped? And I asked Siri, can you please go and repair the door? And Siri answered, no, my name is Alexa. No, my name is Alexa. I want to go up and take care of the patients. Hmm. And I asked Alexa, could you please take care of the patient in level 4? No, my name is Siri. I don't want to do this. I'm going to go down to the basement and fix the doors. So when you swap the software, you get transgender robots. Now imagine, because of the wrong software, you try and change the hardware to fit the wrong software. How silly is that? It is really, really silly. Okay. But okay, never mind. Keep that in mind. So, emotionally conditioned memory is the affected software that happens below consciousness. So, the question is, well, software should be written in a way that's most congruent to the hardware. Yes? Okay. Everybody, all of you, yeah, we should always have the software that is written in the most congruent to the hardware way. So here's a question. How many ways can software be written poorly? Well, the answer is many. There's so many ways that you can write the software poorly. And that's the reason why there are so many genders. That's the reason why. And by the way, all these names are self-identified. That means the person who feels this way says, I think I'm this. I identify as this. Well, isn't it interesting that the very name they give themselves is an indication of poorly written software? The software is not really congruent to the hardware that they have. Okay? So I think it's very foolish to give an identity and an importance to a poorly written software. Okay. Um, Now, this is not really to make fun of those who call themselves non-binary, but this is really to point out to something maybe even bigger. I think many of you know about evil, of shaitan, of of Satan, of evil. What's his job? His job is to deceive us. I hope you can now see the deception. Okay. All right, I'll leave it there and let me just continue because I've finished talking about how same sex attractions develop. Let me try and fit in Fitra now. Before I do so, now that you understand hardware and software, I need to speak about equality. Okay, because I think in the Western world, when they talk about equality, it doesn't take into consideration sexual dimorphism, as I explained to you. Okay, when they talk about equality, I think sometimes the wrong idea of men and women should be equal in all possible ways. Uh, I think if you take into consideration God's design of us as men and women, then we should look at equality in a slightly different way. So I'm going to explain it now. So example one, we now know. that the male hardware, human male hardware, and human females hardware is not quite the same. All right. So because you have sexual dimorphism, and therefore equality here, just talking about the hardware, means giving males the opportunity to be fully male and giving females equal opportunity to be fully female. Okay, so I hope you're getting the drift what I'm saying about what does it mean to give equal opportunity. Now, there is overlaps. That's okay. There's commonalities like education, family, community. These are common. But there are certain things is not quite the same. For example, as a child is growing up, the boy is growing up, the boy will be eating more than the girls, surely. Okay. And as the girls are growing up, they will need a little bit more of iron supplement. So they need more iron because of their biology, right? Okay. So there's some differences. Okay. So you get an idea about what I'm talking about equality. All right. You need to give both equal opportunities to be fully male or fully female. And there's some differences between male and female. So that's on the hardware. Let me go on to the software. Now, how do we get the software? And it should be like this: relational conditioning, like other males, with other males. That's how you're getting the software in. And same for the female. Relational conditioning, like other females, with other females. But one more thing: it has to be done in the cultural, religious context of the community. Whether you're a Filipino Christian, or you're a Malay Muslim, or you're a Chinese Buddhist, it doesn't really matter. Each of these communities have their ways of having relational conditioning, like other males, with other males. Okay? So it goes like this. For the males, it is access to collective engagement. That means you allow the boy, you allow the young man to have access, collective engagement as community protectors. As you know, the hardware, males, they're there to provide protection. And the female, equal access to collective engagement as co-enablers of community survival. And then you have the commonalities, the laws, the social practice, decorum, etc., etc. Okay. All right. Let me go further. This. Oh, sorry. This is interesting. Why do I'm going to show you some pictures of marriage costumes. Why? Because it shows you the role of the man in that community and the role of the woman in that community. Okay, and as you know, when you have a marriage, you have all the communities coming together, and obviously they want to see the man dressed in a way that fits the community. This is Laotian Buddhist. Okay, you see the sword here. It's a symbol of the man who is the protector. Okay, I'm going to show you the next one. This is Indonesian Muslim. You see the kris here, the sword, small little kris here. Then this is, see, oh, this is a big sword. Okay, and then this is Thai, and see the man in military uniform. This is India, and he's probably one of the judge. So again, the man, he's involved in as part of the community, to have the systems and all that. And this is Chinese, the scholar. Okay, so this is interesting. You see that the role of the men and the women and is reflected in the marriage costume as a reflection of what the community wants to see. Okay, now one more example when things don't go right. So when, for example, one parent dies or is incarcerated or is not emotionally present, then the community needs to step in to fill the gaps. So the boy, you need father figures to step up to provide security, instruction, and guidance. And for the girl, for the mother figures to step up to provide extra sustenance, instruction, and guidance. Okay. Now this is what happens when something is not right. Okay. And this is crucial because you remember you need to have something to provide the software. Okay. And of course, it still has to be within the cultural religious context of the community. Okay, then we can come back to Fitra. So now you know it's not just the hardware, but the software. So you need to take care of the physical development, or to be more accurate, physical developmental health. Now, what this means is that if you want your children to develop healthily, you don't expose them in a physical environment that's not healthy. You don't feed them with food that is not healthy, right? So physical developmental health includes all of this. But then again, you also have this, taking care of the psychosocial developmental health. In other words, if you want your children to grow up and have good psychosocial health, you don't expose them in a home environment that is psychosocially unhealthy. Parents fighting, that's not healthy. Okay? Or mothers being domineering and controlling the son, that's not healthy. Or fathers treating the wife in a bad way, that's not healthy for the daughter, for the girl, or the boy. Okay, so all these things are very important, but I think in too many cultures, and I know in Asia, people are not aware of this. But I think it's high time that we are aware of it. Okay. One more thing is you need to have this for Fitra, because Fitra is not just this, it's not just the original state, but the original state which includes the desire, motivation, submission to the supremacy of God's wisdom in nature's design. This is crucial. Now, over here, we now know this is the problem, but you need to have this also, which is the desire, the motivation, and all. This is with correct understanding, okay? But if this was conditioned poorly, what can be done? Okay? The answer is not so straightforward. And I'm telling you, as my work as a counselor, as a therapist, okay? First and foremost, you need effort, and faith is still required, all right? So let me explain. You saw this just now. These are some of the common factors. But let's say for the boy, let's say these are some of the factors, then these are some of the effort that's required. Now, this is very general, okay? Now, when I take a particular case, I need to identify exactly what are the factors involved, and then I will need to tailor some of the things that he can do. It's not a guarantee that things will be reversed. It's not a guarantee. We're just doing what we can. Then we leave the rest to God. Okay, so this is the girl, and this are the things we can do for the girl. Okay, so it's not that easy. And I would say, sorry, I forgot to mention this. One of the most important is exercise good male morality. This is crucial. Okay, and here also, okay, be an example of good morality in a woman. Now, coming back to here, okay, so we need to have this desire and motivation, and then we have this, all that there. Okay, now I'm going to be ending my presentation quite soon, so just allow me to just go on a little further. I know somebody wants to have some questions, but I'm so glad you have questions. When you have this effort going, there will be unique experience and insights will be gained. I've done this work with so many people, and everyone will have a very unique insights. Okay. Then let's go to faith. We know what is faith. Huh? Faith is confidence and trust in whatever has been taught to you. The sixth pillar is faith, including the wisdom of the ages learned and contained in cultural religious practices. Okay. Now we just spoke about this, and we spoke about the unique experiences and insights contribute here and contribute for the next and the future generation and that will help the next generation. Now, I've done work with some of the seminarians and all that. They have started to do this for the next generation. And then when they get there and it says, and by the way, those who do the work, they says, yes, I've struggled so much. I really, really want to help a young man who have gone through the same struggles as I have. That's what I see very, very clearly. Okay. And when they have done this work, you see that they really want to help the next generation. Okay. Lastly, let me explain this. Huh? This is a graph. The further right you go, the more the structural stigma in the society is. The further up you go, the more there's concealment of sexual orientation. Not surprisingly, you will have countries like UK and America, they're all in the bottom left. But these are countries in Western Europe and North America. What about Asia? I've got to open up the scale. This is the rest of the world. The size of the circle shows you how many people are hidden. A
Right.
lot of Africa is up there. A lot of Asia is here. I tell all the religious groups, don't be too concerned about people on the left-hand side, the LGBT. Be, try and reach out to all these people who are hidden. Okay, and the way to do it is to explain to them, you did not choose to have your same-sex attractions, but there are reasons why you get them. Let's work together. Let's find out all the factors there. Let's educate the important people around you. Let's change the language. Let's remove all the prejudices. Let's work together and let's bring everybody back together, learn the lessons, and let's help the next generation have less problems. Okay. So I really hope that this presentation, you get something. So I've done that. And so this is the end of my presentations. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody will have.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm sure the audience is digesting so much that was given here. And I love your talk about hidden populations which don't have a language, don't have a way of differentiating. And I'm sure um, uh, it, you come across the happiness when clients can find a common language, as you said, that they don't have a language, they don't have uh, a way of describing themselves or a way of describing what they're feeling, and putting it as concentrating on the LGBTQ issue and not actually concentrating on people in our own conservative communities who are suffering, but they're too afraid to get help and too afraid to come forward. So yes, as Brian's just mentioned, please feel free. There is a Q&A button at the bottom where you can write. If you want to write anonymously, there is also the option for you to write anonymously. Um, you can also raise your hand if you want to speak. Just be aware that if you do speak, that your name will be shown on the webinar, and this is recorded. So, so just be aware of that. If there's any questions that you want to ask through raising your hand and showing your voice, so that would show whatever name you've signed in with. Um, so yes, as people are writing their questions, I had a question where I love that diagram that you showed from birth, and then you said developmental factors, um, and you're ending up with two outcomes. Yeah, that one. So, um, in in this one, I really like the fact that you've put at birth and then you've put developmental factors that have contributed to same-sex attraction. So it isn't, uh, kind of um, this concept that it's very likely predetermined. I mean, sometimes we do talk about some people are more emotionally sensitive than others, and there's some traits in our character that can um, allow us to lean more towards non-heterosexuality, as you've said it, than others, but they're not deterministic, let's just say deterministic factors, but you put developmental factors, and then you've put first awareness of uh, non-heterosexuality, which I'm assuming is maybe the point of puberty, or maybe there's a point of first sexual experience, if it's before puberty. Mhm.
Well, to be a bit more accurate, right?
Mhm.
Especially in religious communities, the first awareness doesn't mean that's accepted. It's more likely it comes up and then it gets suppressed down and no, 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 or is it going to go away, something like that. So the first awareness could be maybe 12 years old, but it's no acceptance. It's not going to be any acceptance, maybe until 17, 18 years old. And then here's the funny thing. If they do accept that, okay, I'm gay, and then they look back at the history, actually, I think I've always been attracted to the same sex since 7 years old. So many of this is actually retroactive once they make that decision that I am gay, that I am lesbian. Okay. But I do want to say something else. Same sex attraction actually is a normal part of growing up. And let me tell you why. At birth, a boy would naturally look at other men, but not in a sexual way. It's like, wow, I want to be like daddy when I grow up. I want to be like David Beckham. I want to be like Superman. Okay, and usually they would be doing play acting. I'm Superman. I'm combat. I'm this. I'm that. I'm soldier center. And that play acting itself is actually putting in that software. And if nobody bullies or nobody says anything negative, then the software is actually being introjected. And sometimes the software can be fully set in by the time the child reached 10 years old, maybe. All right. So same sex attraction actually is a normal part of growing up. But not every child is so lucky. And if it's not completed by puberty and then it stretches on, and then here's the unlucky thing. I remember there's also a lot of LGBT ideology that affects the desire to be aligned to God's design. I want to stress this. There's a lot of LGBTQ ideology that affects the desire to be aligned to God's design. And that is damaging. I'm sorry to say, but it's true. It is damaging. And if a child hasn't completed introjecting all these things, and then he begins to feel his first attraction, but not really sexually. He's still attracted to the other guys who plays football very well and all that. But then the sexualization and then the LGBT, oh, you're supposed to be sexualized. Yeah, it's okay to have sex and to masturbate in pornography and oh, it's normal. Then the person is led away further away from God's design. That is the unfortunate thing that's happening in society. And I really hope that there will be religious teachers who will stress, you know, don't go in the wrong direction. God's design really is the best.
And this point is so important because a lot of people who come with same-sex attraction believe they're inherently different from straight men. Whereas when we talk about it and we say, well, if other men went through what you went through developmentally, there's a high chance that they may have also ended up with same-sex attraction because
Exactly.
with
Exactly.
the LGBTQ identity, it makes you feel you're inherently different from the other identity. And that's how they divide, kind of um, they're gay men and then there's straight men, rather than saying um, for people who grew up having same-sex attractions, they may not have had um, as the developmental factors that have ended up with same-sex that's caused or created some of the same-sex attractions. But it also means that if I have same-sex attractions now, it doesn't mean that I will never have opposite sex attractions in the future. So it's a very, like you said, and very early deterministic type of um, modeling, which um, which calls gender fluid, but doesn't call the thing that is fluid, which is sexuality fluid.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, yes. I think what's very, very important is, you know, unfortunately, in the Western Europe and maybe even in America, there's such a strong belief or widespread belief that, oh, I'm different, I'm made different. You know, all the information that I have, all the information that's in the books that I put in, I can tell you it doesn't exist in any of the universities. Then where did I learn it from? I learned it from people on path A to C, right there on your screen. All right. They are the ones who come to me and they say, I really don't want this. Can you cure me? And I said, I don't think I can cure you, but let tell me in detail what is your background history. Tell me your growing up years. And boy, do they tell me lots of things. Okay, of course, in hopes that I will find something. But that's how I learn. They tell me everything. And someone who is an activist, who's a gay activist, will tell me nothing. They will say, no, there's nothing wrong with me. No, my family is fine and everything. But actually, there is something. To be more accurate, okay, now, if nobody tells them anything, they can't find anything. Okay, whether you're in path B or path C, you can't find anything. But when they read my books, all right, those on A to C, they can pick up maybe about three factors around there. And when they come to work with me, I will pick up another three that they can't pick up, even though they have read the books. That's how much it can be. Okay.
Mm,
So my point is there is factors there. And firstly, for the person who has same-sex attraction, it really feels inborn. It really feels that, I didn't choose this. Yes, I totally agree with you. You didn't choose this. But your parents will say, how I wish I knew ahead of time. These are the factors. Fathers will say, how I wish I would spend more time. How I wish I would not have scolded him so hard. Mothers would say, how I wish I would back off and let father take over. Or I would, you know, encourage my husband to take this boy, and for the girl, some parents will say, I'm just so sorry. I wasn't a good role model. I'm just so sorry I did this. So There's a lot to learn for parents. There's a lot to learn for the community. There's a lot to learn for the individual. Okay. And I think the worst thing that can be done is to have a ban on somebody who wants to learn, who wants to find out. Okay, look at my case. Tell me what are the factors. Okay. And in Australia, I think in America, in some places, if I even suggest that there are factors, they will immediately brand me as a conversion therapist. They will immediately brand me as, well, I'll tell you that if I was doing my work in America, I would never come to all this information that I have, because nobody would say anything to me. Nobody would dare, and no therapist would dare to ask those questions. Thank God I'm in Asia, and there are so many people who are asking me, "Can you help me, please?" And by the way, if they said, "Can you cure me?" I would say no. But what I can do is I can help you to understand how it develops. After that, I can help your parents to understand so that they don't blame you. Okay. I have to also work on the parents says, please don't blame yourself because you didn't know. But what you can do is you can change your ways as parents. And then I'll speak to the community. And most of the time it works very well. Okay. Most of the time it helps the person to integrate back into the society, even though the same sex attractions may still be there, but it's not overwhelming.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So these are very important points that I would really like to share with all of you. And um, I hope you all are inspired to also do similar work.
May God bless Asia with the religious freedom that it has, and may it continue. We have another question on, I think it was the individual who raised up the hand during the presentation, and he says, "Thank you for the presentation. Is there an age limit for correcting the same-sex attraction?"
Okay. I wouldn't say correcting, okay, but rather the ability to live a life that is more aligned to your belief system. I think that's more accurate, right? Because it depends very much on where when I have clients who come in and they're already in their 40s. Okay. And the issue is not so much about can you correct my same sex attraction or can you cure me? That's not the issue. The issue is I'm still falling for pornography. I still have this attraction. I still have all these problems. And by the way, the sex is only one issue. There's the other side of it, huh? The oversensitivity, the fear of what people are thinking about you, um, perfectionism, too much perfectionism, okay, and emotional dysregulation. These are all standard that comes together because if you look at the background factors, it comes with other things, right? I don't feel good enough. I don't feel that I can fit, and therefore I have this fear of what other people are thinking about me. So all these things are there, and then if they're not managing these things well enough, then there's a problem of I have a lot of negative effect. Now, I need to explain this negative effect, okay? When you have a lot of negative effect, psychologically, automatically, again, not consciously, you want to have positive effect. Positive effect means people are praising you. People are saying, oh, you're so clever, you're so good. So when you have a lot of negative effect, and negative effect is when you feel you're not good enough, you feel that you're under stress, you feel that I'm not meeting up to the standard that I have set for myself. That's a problem if you set the standard too high. So if you have a lot of negative effect, you want to have a lot of positive effect too to balance it out. But what if positive affect is not enough? Then psychologically you'll be going for affect relief. Affect relief are all the vices. And the vices can be smoking, drinking alcohol, computer games, pornography, whatever. That's called affect relief. Okay. So many of my clients, even though they're 40 years old, they're struggling with all these issues. I can't give up my addictions, my addictions to YouTube, my addictions to overeating, my addictions to whatever. That's on top or along with the same sex attraction. So I'm working with them to reduce all the stress, and I will help them to identify, okay, where is this coming from? Okay, you have set too high a standard. Where is this high standard coming from? Oh, when I was in school, my parents is never happy if I have scored anything less than 95%. And I said, well, okay, it's time to change that. So we've got to look at all these things over here. Okay, so it really depends. To answer your question, this is the main thing I work with. Okay, so we look at all the background histories, what is causing all this background stress, a push for um, positive effect or effect relief. But when it comes to young men, okay, young boys, and by the way, this is very rare that I have a boy coming in together with the parents. This is very rare. I only get it when I give a talk to the whole community, and then maybe the boy is too close or the girl is too close to their parents, and they come together and they said, "My child is struggling with this. Can you help us?" In that case, in those kind of cases, the improvement is very fast. When I say fast, I'm talking about 6 months to a year. They feel much better, and then the same-sex attraction is not an issue after that. It doesn't mean you can't come back. It can if they, go back to their old bad ways. Okay, but these are quite rare. And it only happens when I give the education to the whole community. More often than not, an individual will come alone and they will beg me, don't tell my parents, don't tell, because I don't think they will accept it no matter what. And most of the time, I respect that because the parents are having their own issues. Or I have parents that come and then the son or the daughter has already identified as LGB or gay or lesbian and is not ever going to change because they've already bought in wholesale all the ideologies. Okay, so very rare do I have both the parent and the child coming together. And usually the child is still quite young, between ages about 13 to about 16. They're still together as a family. So I hope that answers your question. There isn't really an age group per se.
Thank you. Um, Another question relating to the diagram. What if someone is type C, but he or she didn't experience any of these factors? I
I think
guess.
you
Mhm.
I
I guess
think we
factors relating to developing SSA, I think was
yeah, I
alluded.
think we missed the question by Ahmed Kaya, I think.
Oh yes, I went to this one just because you've got the diagram showing.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, all right. Okay, okay. Now, this question, this anonymous to say, what is our type C, but he hasn't experienced any of these factors? Now, it's a very common question, very, very common. But as I explained to you, if, if you have never seen the factors, it is very likely that you don't know that there are factors if you've never seen it. Okay. But if you read it, if someone reads it who has same-sex attraction or in path C, that person can identify at least one or two, sometimes three, sometimes four. And then when I'm working with this person, looking through his background history in a very detailed way, I will help him or her identify another two or three. Okay. So to answer your question, if this person has never seen what are the factors, then the chances of that person saying, I don't have any of these factors is quite high. Okay. I have never come across someone who, after being given all these factors and working very closely with this person, I've never seen someone without the factors. In fact, usually is the minimum of three very strong factors. Pretty often is three or four factors. Okay, so the answer is I've never, and I've seen many cases, hundred over cases. There's not a single one. But those who identify as gay or lesbian who wouldn't go through the background details will tell me very clearly in my face, I don't have anything in my background that contributes to my homosexuality. I've had that told me in my face many times.
Thank you. And then Ed's question. Thank you for showing how SSA developed. Can you explain the process of rebooting or rewiring? Also, how to process failures during this process?
Um, I don't quite understand process failures during this process. I don't think there's any failure per se. Okay, neither is there any rebooting. Okay, but rewiring. Now remember, it's a deficit. That means not enough affirmation, right? Remember that. So we want to provide the person with affirmation. Um, the work is quite, how shall I say? It's quite detailed, specific. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you somebody who has done this work quite in detail. But here, now, this person is in religious studies. He is going to become a religious teacher. Okay.
Mhm.
And he comes to me and he says, okay, I'm struggling with same sex attractions and blah, 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 blah. And he is really serious about it. So I asked him, you now understand, because I actually gave him a lot of psychoeducation. You now know that when you feel bad, you don't feel good enough, those are the triggers. So list down for me on list number one all the triggers. Okay, so look at this. Feeling inferior, okay, when I'm unable to do something. So this is one of the triggers. Conflict among those who are close to me. And this is, he's telling me when his parents fight, I feel guilty. That's not uncommon, eh? When
Mm.
people point my weaknesses and ridicule me. Remember, these are all negative effects. So these are all the triggers. Now, countering the fact is, usually they try to write, but it's very weak. Usually I will have to write this to flesh it out to be a bit stronger. Okay. So this is some of the things I have to write. So he writes whatever's on the left and then right now. Sometimes I have to help them because after they tell me about background history, I say, oh, this is one of those also. And okay. So I have to help them here. I have to help them a lot on the right side. Now that's list number one. List number one is steps to move in the right direction. And this is different from every person because every person's triggers, every person's factors are different. Okay. Now, let's take a look at list number two, keeping myself safe. So I will ask him, write down what kind of person attracts you. And each person, again, this is different. Okay. And striving to stay safe. Now, this is necessary because as a person in the religious, going to be a religious teacher, can you imagine if he falls and gets into one of this? It's a huge scandal. Okay. So he writes all this out, and then this is on the right side. So he has two lists, right? And the two lists is called moving in the right direction and keeping myself safe. So these are the two lists. And I say to him, read this two lists every day in the morning before you start the day. You've got to know them like the back of your hand. Okay. And when you get to the point where It's so second nature to you. And by the way, this person, I said, practice this every day and come back to me in a few weeks and tell me how you feel after a few weeks. Okay. He came back to me after 6 weeks and he says, Brian, this is good. It really, really helps me on the left side and I don't have so much problems here. I asked him, I said, how many more years is your religious training? He says, 2 more years. I said, okay, this tool is going to keep you safe for the next 2 years. But after that, when you move to a new place, when they post you to a new place to do your work as a religious teacher, we've got to update this. And he says, okay, that's definitely what I'll be happy to do. I said, one more thing you need to do. You need to show this to the person who has authority over you. Show it to this person to reveal to this person over you that number one, yes, I have same sex attraction, but I'm showing you this two lists as a sign of my commitment to do what is right and safe. That's number one. Number two, to ask your support for me to maintain these two lists. He did that, and that is when the internal shifts now shoots up. Now, I'm sorry, I have to backtrack that. When he did that, and then the person who has authority over him says, wow, I like this. Despite you having same sex attraction, this is the effort that you're putting in to do what is right and to move in the same in a safe direction. Of course, I will support you. Of course, I accept, you've done all this. Now, only when the person in charge says, I support you, I'm now behind you, I'm now for you, then the internal shifts now shoots up. Why? Because remember, I'm talking about positive effect, negative effect. The positive effect is now very high. It now shoots up. And then the risk of SSA goes down. So it is not just having these two lists, but having these two lists being supported by someone who is above you, who has authority over you. That's the one. That's the one that's really going to shoot up. Okay. So coming back to the question, let me see if I can remember the question.
Yeah, explaining the process of rewiring.
Ah, right. Okay. So you get a sense of what is this process. Um, I don't think you even think about failure. You just got to do it. Okay. And it really depends on your motivation. Remember the part about Fitra. Do you really want and have the desire to be aligned to what God wants you to be? Now, this adds one more layer because this person, and I know this person personally, yeah, and he's made tremendous progress because not only the person in charge of him, but the number two man in charge of him also supports him. So he's got tremendous support now, despite him having SSA, and he doesn't have the temptation so much, or rather, he knows SSA can come back anytime. Yes, but he doesn't give it to him. It is easy for him to overcome the temptations. And he is now helping the younger men who come to him and say, can you help me with this problem I have? And says, man, it's given me so much meaning to the struggles I've gone through. Okay, so it's an ongoing process, it's an ongoing thing. All right, so, but admittedly, it does require someone who is trained, someone who knows what to look for. Now, I am a supervisor of counselors. I do have currently about 12 counselors who have been trained by me. But training is one thing. They need to also have real cases in order to learn from. So every month we do have what is called case conferencing. So somebody will say, okay, I've got this new case, and everybody come. Those who can make it, they come. We learn together. Every case is different. Okay, so In this group, I have two Muslims. They are females. Okay. I have one imam. He's not a counselor, but because he's not a counselor, but he's an observer, and he loves to be present because he keeps telling me, Brian, I learned so much from all these case conferencing and case studies. So I said, I'm glad, that you're learning. And I have the rest who are Christians and who are Catholics. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Okay, so it's not really a reboot per se or rewiring, but it's really about knowing your background history and building all this up. And, then you get to understand, maybe now that I can help people, because I've myself gone through a process, and now that I can help people, now I'm beginning to see, maybe that's why God allowed me to have same sex attractions. Maybe. So I hope that somehow answers that question.
Thank you. Uh, Thank you for that detailed answer and an example. Um, Final question. Um, why does someone who is or identifies as LGBT say that there's nothing in the past or nothing that they can recall?
Oh, okay, I wouldn't say and not everybody, but the ones who want to assert that they have the right to live the gay lifestyle, who wants to propagate, the acceptance of same-sex marriage and all that. Obviously, they do not want, or to be more accurate, they're very, very wary. They're very afraid that it can be proven that there are causes of having homosexuality. Because when there is a cause, the implication is, well, if you know the cause, then somehow you know how to prevent it and you know how to maybe even reverse it. That's what they do not want. I'm not saying all of them, but those who are more vocal, those who face the religious, and if the religious ask, tell me more about your background history, tell me more of your family. If they want to push the point through, they will say, nothing wrong with my family. My family is fine. My family is okay. Or it may not be okay. They will say, there's nothing there for you to see. Okay. But like I said, I'm dealing with those who are hidden because, they have a different worldview and they do want to try as best as possible to live according to, the teachings of their faith. And they tell me everything. They tell me in great detail. So all that you learn from me today is actually coming from them. So they are the ones to be thankful for.
Thank you. And wow, time has passed so quickly. It seems. And thank you for a very in-depth view of Q&A, and you put the three topics of um, faith, Fitrah, and SSA so well. Um, and thank you so much for your time, because I know it's probably later where you are. Um, any closing comments? I know if you want to speak or connect with Brian, then there is the website of socgc.weebly.com, or you can contact myself as well to get Brian's details. Um, any closing remarks or anything you wanted to cover that maybe we didn't get time to?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, yes, that is
Okay. I'm just guessing the audience here belonging to those who are more on the conservative and religious and wanting so much to be in the faith.
that's
So
correct.
yeah, so I do want to say to all of you, please search for the truth. Okay. To tell you frankly, when I see some of the arguments from the activist side, many times I say that that's not deep enough. Many of them, are saying that no, you must accept them as they are. I said, no, that's not deep enough. Okay, the kind of work that I'm doing, very often I've got to go very deep, sometimes deeper than my clients are aware of. Okay, but I can tell you that's what they want. They want to understand themselves very well. And they also want to know um, what is God's will for me? Why is God allowing all these things for me? And I'm more than happy to help them in that process. Okay. So I do want to say to all of you, keep searching for the truth. Okay. By the way, when we do research, research is never close ended, meaning when you present, you are giving, these are the pros and cons, and other people can take what you found, and then they can build up on it. Now, if you notice the other side, I'm talking about the activist side, they will say, no, don't do any more research. Just accept it as it is. Sorry, that doesn't work with how we learn the truth. All right. And I've done this work for quite some time, and believe me, I'm just so amazed how truth builds upon the truth. And I'm learning something new every day from my clients. And I really hope that all of you will get on the same journey to learn God's wisdom and God's truth, which is embedded in all His creation. So thank you so much for this time that all of you have spent together with me.
Thank you for your beautiful reminder to delve a little deeper. And I guess that's exactly what connection with God looks like, right? And until we delve a little bit deeper into ourselves, we're not able to find our uh, relationship with God and then what that means. And it's just taking, we have to maybe go. And I loved how you split it into the declarative memory, what we can verbalize, what comes out in talk therapy, but a whole host of things which are in the unconscious, which don't come out until you go much deeper, and then these memories start coming out where you're like, oh, I forgot about this, or where did this memory come from, and all about that process of going deeper. And it's such a blessing. I want to thank you, Brian, for giving this evening. I know it's later in the evening for you, for this time. I thank you on behalf of the Muslim community to the work you're doing in Singapore, and kind of having the willingness to take the Muslim imams or the Muslim therapists among your wing, and kind of being very truly faith focused for this huge population, which is like you said, this. I think that graph was so beautiful how you described that this is what we focus on and this is what we don't focus on, right? In terms of the huge silent majority, which is not speaking and is hidden and doesn't have a language, doesn't have a voice, doesn't have a way of understanding how to describe what they're experiencing, because unfortunately, one way of thinking is too loud that it's oppressing other ways of thinking to exist. So thank you so much, and God bless.
Yes. God bless you too.